So thank you very much for inviting me. Now I feel a bit embarrassed because now, as an economist, after this very insightful and deep and sort of historically based talks, so now you will see that I will just use a few pictures, some bold generalizations, and maybe a little bit of math. So that's so. Now, the big questions about the revolutions in the Arab world, of course, are why? Why in general? Why would we have these revolutions? Why now and not 6 months ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago? And what next? Now, I will try to say, I don't think I will have really an answer for any of these three questions, so, but I will, because as in economics, we like to frame the question, but that we don't have answers. But I will try to provide some facts and some comments that can help to shed some insights on answers, especially for the why and the why now. And I will say very little about the what next, but I will leave that maybe for the discussion. Now, so the distinction between why and why now, because it's why I said, what is the role of economic and political long-term fundamentals? So there are some fundamentals that really almost scream for sort of a revolution, for democratization, for a change in political institutions. Now, one thing that, of course, we should all be aware, and I think this has already been mentioned in some of the previous talks, is, of course, the Arab world is highly heterogeneous. It's highly diverse. It's not one country. It's a lot of different countries, and even within countries, there is a lot of heterogeneity, diversity. There is both economic heterogeneity, and there is political heterogeneity in terms of difference in income per capita, human development, political institutions. There are, of course, some structural similarities that a lot of them go back to the fact that there is what we call a short cultural historical distance between these countries. There is a common history, there is a common culture, so that matters, and I will also argue briefly that this will also matter for the diffusion of these revolutions. Now some numbers. Because I'm the economist here, I'm here also to give you some numbers and some facts. So here is one way to see the enormous heterogeneity in terms of economic development, in terms of income per capita in the Arab world. So in green, of course, you have the Arab countries, and in black you have everybody else. The world, in terms of dollars per capita in 2009, controlling for purchasing power, had an income per person, per head, of around $10,000. So first fact is there is large heterogeneity in income. So Libya and Egypt are extremely different in their income per capita, in their wealth. And of course, the main source of income for Libya is oil, and so is for Saudi Arabia, while that's not the case for Egypt and Tunisia. That, of course, changes the political economy of the story. Now, there are some similarities, although are sort of in some dimensions, although perhaps for different reasons in this country. Here is the high youth unemployment, which has been mentioned often as a factor. Now, the world has a 15% unemployment rate among young people. In the Arab countries, it's twice as high. It's 30%. This is a structural unemployment. It's not cyclical unemployment. It has been around for a long time, and it has become worse even over time, in some sense, and it's really due to structural reasons, to reasons that have to do with the skill composition, with the educational system, with not just with the business cycle might make things worse, but this is not cyclical unemployment. It's structural, so that makes it much harder. But the most important factors that I think is really has received a lot of attention, and I think rightly so, because it has to do with political institutions. One thing that really is in common among Arab countries, especially those where you see revolts, but also some where you don't see as much of an open revolt, is a feeling that the political institutions, or the institutions of the country in general, are not really adequate for the level of development and the aspirations of the region. The rule of law, for example, which is a fundamental, and I will mention later when I say why now, I will mention this again. The rule of law is really it's low, and it has been deteriorating in the past few years. Between 1998 and 2007, as you see, the Arab countries became even worse in terms of rule of law. Only Sub-Saharan Africa has a worse rule of law. That is, can you really trust the legal system? Can you really have a protection of your rights? Can you really go, is really the government or is really the authority sort of responsive to well-defined rights and obligations. So in Eastern Europe, the rule of law has slightly improved. In East Asia, slightly improved. In the Caribbean, slightly improved. So, and of course, starting from already higher levels. So this is a big problem. The freedom deficit, of course, has been known now for a long time as a huge problem. These are all the countries in the world that are considered not free, according to Freedom House, which is one of these measures of freedom. And as you can see, a lot of Arab countries are here, in fact, most of them. 5.5, this is a grade. So a 5.5 is a higher grade. I don't know, it's like, I don't know, a D minus maybe, I don't know, no, a D plus maybe. The 6 is like a D, and maybe 6.5 like a D minus, and 7 is like F, I would say. So clearly Libya is an F together with North Korea. And so it's one of these are the least free countries in the world. They're in that list of shame. Burma, Eritrea, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Sudan. So, but Tunisia, which has been seen by many, at least outside, I was surprised myself to see Tunisia here as a 6, together with Zimbabwe, you know, and you know, Iran. It's very a country that really, this is was 2010, so that was just the year before the revolution. So Tunisia is clearly not a free, was very low in, and you can see all the other countries are basically, Egypt is a 5.5. So this freedom deficit here has been, you know, well documented, and we know that the Arab people themselves were not happy with this for years. So for years, if you ask the World Value Service that ask people in different countries, is democracy important? You could hear people in there will say, yes, it's extremely important. It's not that they were not free because they didn't care. I mean, they were not free for reasons, for some, you know, deep historical reasons. A lot of these people in charge, by the way, they were the descendants, they were all little Bonapartes. I mean, they did come from throwing out monarchies, autocratic, maybe monarchies, but and imposing military regimes, or authoritarian regimes. You can see Egypt and Libya, they both came from sort of nationalist, socialist revolutions, etc. So, but other countries, you know, have a different history, and they have, you know, a more traditional monarchy. For some reason, they're all not free. So this was pointed out by the Arab Human Development Report in 2002, the first Arab Human Development Report that came out. It's a very interesting document and very well made. Okay, so we see that in terms of economic development, there are certainly issues with economic development, although these are not revolts or revolution because people are poor, necessarily, and sometimes they are, it's more about governance and political institutions than about poverty per se, although the low legitimacy that these governments have because they do not provide enough economic development is certainly one of the reasons. So then the big questions are, can we say that maybe optimistically, as there is being some economic development or there's been some economic growth in the Arab world, that's what is leading to democratization, which is all the hypothesis among some social scientists and goes back to Lipset and others? Or can we say that if finally these countries become democratic, then there will be economic growth and there will be some improvement economically? And here I have to say that, you know, here economists, empirical economists are extremely skeptical about both of these propositions. There's not much empirical evidence to support either a direct effect of development on democratization or a direct effect of democratization on economic growth. So development and democracy are not, although they are correlated in the data, if you are richer, you are also more democratic, they're not causing each other in any sense, which is both bad news and good news, I think, for the Arab world. Also, it's both good news for the Arab world because it means it's not necessary to reach very high levels necessarily of economic development or human development in order to achieve democracy. Democracy can be achieved almost at any level of income, but at the same time, there is also an issue that finally having more democratization or more participation doesn't mean that there will be economic prosperity, because economic prosperity is due to deeper underlying forces that are correlated both with democracy and development. There are characteristics, but are really sort of a deeper institutional and cultural. So why now? And there is a literature on the political economy of rights and revolutions. And here we have, in fact, in this room, one of the contributors to the economics of social interaction, Professor Ioannidis, who has worked on this. And it goes back to some very important work by Thomas Schelling, a Nobel laureate, who is also one of the teachers of Larry Bacow. And Larry always cites Schelling in every faculty meeting, so all the time. But we never rioted against him, so I don't know. Strategic complementarities and critical mass, multiple equilibria, social multipliers. So this is all the sort of a jargon but I want to explain this in the simplest possible way with just one page, a model. So I had to come with a model. I knew that that would give me some comparative advantage compared to political setting. So here is a simple model. So why now? I mean, after all, these things have been going on for 20 years. The fact that there are high benefits from a change, or at least from showing to the government that the people want a change, has been around for a long time, and they are high. They might have been increasing over time, but they've been there. Of course, there are also high costs from revolting. They might have decreased a little bit in some countries, but they're pretty high. Libya is certainly enormous. There are high costs if you revolt, personal costs. You can be shot, you can be arrested. They've been there before. They were certainly present potentially in also in Egypt and Tunisia, where things were a little bit more peaceful, but up to a point. So what is going on? So here, the fact is that this is a typical case where if you riot, it's very good if everybody else around you also does it. So there's a strategic complementarity. If the benefits of a revolution is very high if a lot of other people have a revolution. Some isolated heroes might find the benefit and they don't care about the cost. They just want to immolate themselves. But most people want to have low cost. And the cost is decreasing in the number of people that participate to the revolution. For what next, I only have two cartoons, of course, and so this is, of course, the domino effect is based on information cascade. You can see the model right there, the dynamic model, now when it spreads. So I would say my conclusion is very optimistic in terms of even of the economy for the long run, because I think that if this is really a cultural societal transformation, it might have affected those fundamental underlying characteristics that eventually affect both development and democratization. So that's my hope, that this is really a structural change for the good, and that's even economically. In the short term, there may be cost, but in the long term, there would be more economic prosperity in the long term as a result. Thanks.